The following is an update to a story that I had featured in my creepy witchcraft video. If you have not seen that video, I will have it on the screen now, or you can find a link to it in the description. I recommend watching that first, and then coming back and listening to this. And without any further ado, let's begin. Several more things have occurred since then, and I want to share it with everyone. I want to make it clear that yes, I stated she was a Wiccan. However, she does not practice it properly. I know for a fact that she is into dark magic. I also know for a fact that she has a psychological problem. I was informed by her sister that she has acted strangely for over a decade now, and they have been trying to find the proper help for her. With that being said, I would like to share a few more of my own experiences with her. Several days ago, as I was sitting in my living room with my boyfriend, enjoying a movie, we had heard somebody knocking on another apartment door and our hallway. Being the nosy person he is, my boyfriend turned down the volume of the TV drastically to hear what was going on. My landlord and her husband were knocking on Liz's door. It took several minutes for her to answer, but when she finally opened up the door, I overheard their conversation. Apparently, several of the tenants here are Christians, and made a complaint that Liz had put a pentagram wreath for decoration on the outside of her door. And evidently, it was offering the other tenants. Our landlord kindly asked her to remove it, or at least place it inside of her unit where nobody else could see it. My boyfriend and I could hear the frustration in Liz's voice as she reluctantly removed it, and without saying a word slammed the door on our landlord. A few hours had passed, and I was minding my own business cleaning up my apartment a little. As I was getting the dusting done, I heard somebody fairly close to our unit talking. I had gone over to the door and looked through the peephole, and noticed Liz was standing in the middle of the hallway speaking to herself. I could barely make out what she was saying, but her facial expression showed nothing pure of hatred and anger. My other neighbor, who lives diagonal from me, had emerged from his apartment to leave, and unfortunately ran into Liz. She turned around and stared at him, and immediately pointed at him, and asked if he was the one who had turned her in for the pentagram wreath. Being such a shy gentleman, he shook his head, and must have mustered what seemed to be no, before brushing past her and heading down the stairs. For whatever reason, Liz did not like his reaction, and leaned over the banister and told him that she knew it was him, and he would get his. I was honestly scared for this poor kid, because he seemed to get out of the building fairly quickly. Once he was out of sight, she returned to her unit and slammed the door, making my apartment shake lightly. A couple of days had passed, and we had had no further instances with Liz. It was around midnight, and my boyfriend and I were just coming home from Walmart. As we were bringing our groceries up the stairs, we had noticed Liz had her apartment door propped wide open. From what we could tell, she was moving out old furniture that seemed to be busted or no longer good. I peered inside to see what all was going on, but she was nowhere in sight. What I did notice made the hair on the back of my neck stand, and I rushed both myself and my boyfriend into our apartment. From what I saw, she had a couple of satanic crosses hanging in her living room, which were not there previously when I was over there. On her window, that was in clear view of me, were drawings of pentagrams and other types of symbols on it. Once I had shut myself and my boyfriend into our apartment, we began to put the groceries away, and I told him what I had seen. Obviously, he was slightly concerned, especially with the fact that she had satanic crosses hanging. Once all the groceries were put away, we heard a knock on our door. We both grew pale, knowing who was on the other side. It was early in the morning hours, and she was beating on our door. My boyfriend stomped over and swung the door wide open. He was just ready to belt out a rather loud warning before we both realized that nobody was standing outside the door. He glanced around the hall and down the 2 separate corridors, but nobody was in the building. Liz's door was still propped wide open, but at the time she was currently outside throwing away her trash and old furniture. It was at this point my boyfriend began to feel very uneasy, even more so than what I did. He told me that as soon as he opened the door, he was hit with a very cold burst of air, and the hallway itself just felt dark and sinister. Unfortunately, we are extremely used to feeling like this whenever she is around, so the only thing we have learned to do was to pass it off and ignore it. The very next day, I spoke to my Hindi friend. She told me to immediately light a stick of sage and to cleanse my apartment the best I could as I recite the Lord's Prayer. My friend knew that Liz was into a lot of dark things, and she did not want any type of negative energy coming into my home. I did as I was instructed, and the atmosphere felt a little more comfortable. As I was retrieving our mail from a cluster of mailboxes we have at the bottom of the building, I had ran into the gentleman who lives diagonal from us once again. We made a little bit of small talk, and he was asking about different things, and I had brought up Liz. When I had mentioned her, he seemed apprehensive. Long story short, he told me that somebody had left a note on his windshield stating that if he did not mind his own business, and that if he did not let darkness and the Zozo into his life, he would just remain miserable. I simply stared back at him for a minute, baffled that she would have taken something this far. He seemed downright afraid by this point, and didn't even want to bring it up. We were going our separate ways, and upon thinking about what he had stated, I remembered I heard the name Zozo somewhere. I had thought back on all the paranormal series I had used to watch as a kid, and immediately started to do some research. What I had found about the Zozo demon is something that would truly make your skin crawl. Just in case nobody wants to hear it, I will just leave it like this. If you've never heard of the demon and wish to look it up, do so. If you were too afraid to do it, then I would forget about it. I immediately called my friend and told her what I had found out. And the minute I said this thing's name, she immediately told me to silence myself. I was confused, and couldn't understand why she didn't want me to tell her what I had found out about this Zozo. She then informed me that there were many documentaries of people dabbling with a demon called Zozo, and just by reciting its name you were welcoming it into your life. I was slightly skeptical about this, and still am. But just for safety precautions, I decided to not go by its name when talking about the situation. For the most part, things have been quiet, and nothing else has occurred. However, Liz just made it clear that she is definitely practicing something that is very sinister. At this current time, my boyfriend and I are either deciding on moving out of the area, or having a long talk with our landlord about her. We aren't sure if the landlord is going to be able to handle the situation, but if she cannot, we have no other choice but to move. We no longer feel safe and secure in our own home. We have even resorted to staying in our bedroom to have a conversation, because we are constantly feeling like we are being monitored. There were several occurrences where we had discovered that she was eavesdropping, so unfortunately, our bedroom has basically become our living quarters now. I truly hope something changes soon, because if things get worse, I'm not sure what may happen. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check out the description for information on how to submit your stories. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little update, and I hope you watched the first one first. I felt I needed to put this up, because she actually wanted to defend herself against some of the comments, and it would kind of be a dick move if I didn't give someone the opportunity to do so. Besides, at the time of posting this, it's the weekend, and who's not looking for something new to watch? I'll catch you guys in the next video, And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.